thank the PWWA, so Lucia and the team for helping to organise it, the ADB, and particularly Carlos from UNICEF today, who's joined us from the delightful Mount Hagen in PNG. And I've spoken to a few of the utilities in the Pacific this week, and our thoughts are really going out to the people that have been impacted by cyclones again. I know that the guys in PNG have been struggling in Fiji when I spoke to Siri yesterday. Team in Niue are preparing for cyclones in Vanuatu, so it is a bit of a struggle. So we're thinking of everyone that might be impacted by the cyclones. And thanks for everyone that's, with all those things going on, has still managed to join us. So a few housekeeping things. If it's okay with everyone, we'll record this session today. If anyone's not comfortable with that, we just send me a private message in chat and we'll go through how to do that in a second. And we can pause the recording if there's things you'd like to talk about off the record. But otherwise, we'll record the session and make it available. I'll quickly go through some of the Zoom controls that you can see there. So the audio, chat, how to change your name so we can see who's there, how to raise your hand to get a word in, and how to turn your video. Sorry, it should be audio off when you're not speaking. So down at the bottom, if you're not familiar with Zoom, you should be able to hover at the bottom of your screen and bring up a toolbar that looks something like that. There could be potentially a couple of variations of that toolbar. You should see the main features at the bottom. Over on the left is your audio and your video controls. In the center there, participants, we'll go through that in a second. There's a couple of useful features in there, and the chat function, number 7. So we'll have a look at that as well. So if you've got a red line through your audio, we can't hear you. So if you could make sure that if you want to speak, turn your audio back on. And if you're not speaking, if you could mute your audio just so that we don't get interference as we're going through. There's the chat function. We'll make a lot of use of that today if we can. So if you click on chat there, you've got a couple of options. You can talk to everyone in the meeting. So if you've got a thought you'd like to share with all of us, put it in the chat bar there, and Carl will be monitoring the chat and give me a prod if there's some things to talk about there that come up in the chat. So feel free to jump in, make comments, raise issues, and we'll monitor that. If you'd like to send a private message to everyone, you can actually select who you'd like to chat to privately, and that goes just to them and not everyone in the group can see that. So you've got a couple of options there. So please feel free to use chat this morning.
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 It's morning.
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 Yeah, if you could mute your microphone if you're not trying to address the group, that'll help. Just to cut the interference. To change your login name, if you go down to the bottom bar where participants is and click on that, it'll bring up on the right-hand side of your screen a list of all the participants that we've got in the meeting today. You might need to hit more. If your name's there and it's pretty clear, your name and which organisation you're with, that's great. It just helps know who's with us today and who's talking during the meeting. If it's not clear, so if it just comes up with like an email address, if you could click on, you might need to click on more. So click on your name there, you'll recognise your own name or your log on. Click on more and it gives you an option there to rename. So if you just put your name in there and your organisation, that'll really help us out. And then we've got, if you go into participants, there should be an option there to raise your hand, and that brings a little icon up and lets us know that there's something you'd like to talk about, and we can make sure we So yeah, just have a look at those controls. They should all be down the bottom of your screen when you hover up down the bottom of your screen. If there's any questions, find the chat and put it in chat and we can help you out there. Okay, well, I'll hand over to Lucia, the CEO of the PWWA, to give us a welcome this morning, and we'll get on with the presentation. So just before I do that though, Carl, have we got a quorum there? We should have about 25 people. You there, Carl?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, let me have a hand count later.
Okay. Right. Well, I think been a couple of reminders, so we'll just press on. Sorry, Lucia, over to you. Good morning.
Okay, well, good morning and good afternoon also to all of you. We're at 2 p.m. or a little after 2 p.m. here in Samoa. First of all, a warm welcome to our guest speaker and especially the Director of ADB Pacific Department, who has joined us, and also Vivian, the Senior Water Urban Specialist. And thank you, ADB, for sponsoring this workshop and taking a particular interest in our Pacific water utilities. And a warm welcome also, and thank you to all our member utility CEOs and your staff for joining in to participate in this workshop. As you all know, I'm sure this is an activity undertaken under the ADB funded Regional Knowledge and Support TA for strengthening WASH behavioral change in the Pacific. And this is separate from the direct national interventions which have now started in some of your countries. Today's workshop, I think the agenda was sent out to you by Dean, will focus on strategies for supplying water to informal areas and hand washing in public places. And we are fortunate to have Carlos join us as a guest presenter for the workshop from Mount Hagen and B&T. Talofa and welcome, Carlos. Carlos is currently the Chief of WASH in UNICEF PNG. He's been there for 3 years now, overseeing the implementation of the EU UNICEF WASH project and has overseen the UNICEF WASH COVID-19 response. So without further ado, I'll hand it back to Dean now, who needs no introduction, of course, to you. He is known to you all, the ADB consultant for this project and coordinator for the workshop. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Lucia. So I'll share my screen again. If you just let me know if that doesn't come up. And I'll get back into the presentation. Okay. So our agenda for this morning, we've just spent a few minutes on the welcome and introductions. I hope John Dennis has joined us. I haven't seen John there yet, but yeah, John will hopefully talk to us for a little bit, just to give us a background about hand washing and why it's so important. I'm sure all of us in the utilities and have worked in this industry understand about hand washing, but it's one of those things, it's the whole focus of the TA is behavioural change because it's not universally accepted and people don't recognise the importance. So we'll quickly go through that. Then I'll hand over to Carlos. We've had a great discussion with Carlos when we're thinking about this workshop, about his experience, particularly about how he's gone about it in PNG, the design of hand washing stations, the process, where they put them and how they went about it. So we'll hand over to Carlos. He's got a great presentation. And I'd really like to thank Carlos for taking the time to pull that together for us. And today is really a workshop and it's not a lecture. So after we've heard from Carlos, we want to get some feedback from you in the utilities. What are the barriers to implementation of widespread hand washing stations in public areas and settlements in your different countries? Have some discussion about how you would integrate hand washing stations with your utility networks. For the ones that can't be integrated, if you're asked to provide a service, how would you go about that? So we'll have a discussion about that. What are the different thoughts on how you get water out to these remote facilities? And importantly for today, I think, is to have some discussion from you and get some feedback. While we've got the ADB and I think some colleagues from DFAT in the Solomon Islands are joining us this morning. So how can a TA, ADB, DFAT, other government and funding agencies support you to carry out this important work? And hopefully we'll get through all that in an hour and a half today. So the outcomes that I was looking for from the workshop is probably a clear understanding of health links, To make sure we can learn from the experience of people that are out there in the field actually doing this work. Carlos has been doing it for years now, so he's got a lot of great ideas and thoughts and experience about how he's gone about it to share with us. Make sure you give us a clear understanding of the challenges from the utility perspective. So we've got some ideas, we've had some great one-on-one discussions with you, but we'd like to go away today with a collective understanding of what the challenges are from your perspective. And as I said, an idea of how the TA might be able to help. I'll hand over to John to go through the basics of the criticality of hand washing as a disease prevention measure. John, are you with us this morning? Carl, can you see if is John online with us? He might not be able to make it.
It seems it's not yet connected.
Okay. Well, we've had a good chat to John about it, so I might just press on. Carl, would you like to take this section?
No problem. I just couldn't see do you have a PowerPoint presentation, Sean?
Yeah, can you see that?
Well, that one's not showing up on my screen. Sorry.
You need to share the screen, Dean.
Is it not sharing? I'll show it. It looks like it's sharing on my end. Is that sharing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it is.
Great.
That one is showing. Yeah, so I'll attempt to go through John's slide, but essentially, I think everyone's familiar with the fecal oral route, which is commonly known as the F diagram, because it essentially shows exposure pathways of most viruses, bacteria that gets into our body and that makes us sick. So most fecal oral pathogens, when we ingest them, they directly infect us, and they are spread through hands, of course, dirty hands, when we drink dirty water or we eat contaminated food with feces. And so they call it an F diagram because we normally get contaminated through fluids, or we get exposed to the field and floors, or we get bacteria through flies, dirty fingers, and contaminated food. And this is where sanitation, essentially water, sanitation, and hygiene becomes the barriers towards that when we get contamination. And so I think this discussion is about how do we put those barriers by having good wash interventions, clean toilets, proper hygiene, and ensuring that, particularly for utilities, that they supply clean, drinkable water. I think there's another slide, Dean. You can go to it.
Is that everything else? Okay.
Yeah, so we emphasize the need for both soap and the need for safe, clean water. And this is where hand washing comes in to prevent getting us contaminated with flu and gastrointestinal diseases. Especially now with COVID, we always say that wash is a health intervention because the importance of water, clean water, in preventing those diseases, especially for the case of COVID now. And this, I think, part of our discussion today is really how can utilities help out in setting up that barrier that we get contaminated. How do we stop or prevent transmission of COVID in communities by supplying and ensuring that clean water is supplied? So in terms of the soap, this is something that's been neglected in the past with the F diagram. What what soap does is it actually contains surfactants, which are molecules that bind on the dirt in our hands, and that's the effect of soap, that it lifts away on the surface when we use clean water, and thus it eliminates bacteria or diseases in our hands. And you might be wondering what's more effective between using soap and clean water. I mean, using hand sanitizers and soap. Hand sanitizers are more effective than soap at, take note of this, at killing organisms, but they are not as effective if hands are dirty. Yeah, so I think those are just two slides to just bring us back and orient us on the need and importance of having clean water and soap in public places or in our communities. Back to you, Dean.
Excellent, thanks, Carl. I said this was going to be a workshop today. So I've got a question for all of you. So if you've got access to a mobile telephone or another computer, a browser, website, so if you can bring up another window on your computer or grab your phone. A lot of people probably got their phone in their hand, as we all do, so grab your phone out. And if we go to, there's a website there, and I'll bring up a quicker link to it in a second, but the question is, has your mandate to help with hand washing changed since COVID's come along? So are the government, health departments and others asking you to do more? Are they asking you to step into it? No change for you, or is it a change you think is really going to come your way? So have a think about that. If you go to the website www.menti.com, and there's a code to put in, I'll just bring that up on another screen. It might be a bit clearer, so if everyone can have a look at that. You can use the quick reference code on your screen there if you've just got, if you're not in the conference room, it might be quicker. Just take a photo of that and you should be able to click on to take you straight into our survey. Carl, if you've got a second, you might just be able to put that website, menti.com, into the chat and that code there, 2238.
Sure.
7. You got that? I'll jump out of that one. And I'll go across to Menti. And I'll try and share that screen. I managed to find that. Everyone see that screen? Just give a minute. Okay, so the results, you can see the results coming in there. So everyone give us a vote. So just a couple of seconds left there. It's pretty interesting to see, I think, even with everything happening around the world, it doesn't look like for a lot of utilities it's changed yet. So business, it's really business as usual, which is pretty interesting, given that when we talk to governments, health departments, and others in the wash industry, it's certainly top of mind for them about how to do more in hand washing. I can see a few more popping up now. It's changing. Okay, voting's closed. So yeah, that's pretty interesting that, yeah, for a lot of you, the world hasn't changed yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's coming, even though we thought that COVID might be largely behind us. You hear about these new strains now. I was reading today that the vaccines they're talking about mightn't be as effective against new strains. So even though the world mightn't have changed for you yet, you can see there for some of your colleagues that the world is changing. Okay, I'll stop sharing that. We'll go back to where we were. And we'll come back to Menti later, so and do something, build up a word cloud a bit later with Menti. Okay, we should be back on the presentation. Does that come up again? How are we looking there? We got on the presentation? You there, Carl?
Yeah, we can see the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for that. We'll hand over to Carlos now. And thanks, Lucy has been through the introduction with Carlos, so he needs no further introduction from me. As I said earlier, what we asked Carlos, we had a great discussion with him about this, the TA and the work he's been doing. We came away with a series of questions and we thought, well, you know, really, how'd you go about it? Where did you put these things? How did you decide how many? What sort of places did you put them and what sort of designs were effective? And had a great discussion about it with Carlos. So he's graciously given his time and gave up some of his time last night to actually go through his presentation to make sure it hit the mark for us today. So thanks, Carlos. I'll now hand over to you and you can tell everyone about your experience in PNG.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. I am honored and humbled to share my experience and my team's efforts in helping communities in PNG to prevent the spread of COVID disease. Also, I do not pretend to have all the answers, and I do not pretend to tell you how things should be done. I'm just one more piece of this amazing part of people that are involved with WASH, and I think we can all learn from each other. Okay, next. Okay, so first I want to start with this slide. No, one,
sorry.
One back.
Yeah, sorry, yep, hang on. Yeah.
Okay. Last year, when all the discussion on COVID and the spread and, you know, fake news were going around, I came across this diagram that explains so well the impact of the work that we're doing. And this is what I call the cost of inaction. In some cases, the cost of inaction could be delays, it could be money not spent. But when it comes to COVID, the cost of inaction is actually lives. People are dying. And if we don't do something, that will be the cost of the inaction. So the graph on the left shows how one person can contaminate 22 people. And then those 22 people can contaminate another 22 people. If we don't do anything, that's how fast this will spread. So you have rings there, ring 1, 2, 3, and as you go out of the epicenter, more people get contaminated. Now, on the right side, we have another diagram where we have person number 1 or person 0 that contaminates 2 people on the first ring. But if one of those 2 people washes his hand or her hand and wears a mask, you stop the spread on one side and it will continue on the other side. So if you don't do anything, one person can contaminate 22 people. If you do something as washing your hands or wearing a mask, one person will only contaminate 14 people. That to me is a pretty strong graphic to show how we can play a role in contaminating or stopping the spread of the disease. Next. We were wrong and we were not afraid to fail. Why were we wrong? Because we knew that we didn't have the answers. This was a global pandemic. I have never experienced this in my lifetime. I'm 54 years old and I've never thought that I would go through an experience like this. So from the beginning, we accepted that we didn't have the answers, and we accepted that no matter what we did, it was going to be wrong because we had nothing to rely on, no experience, nothing to say this is the right answer. And luckily, we were not arrogant either to say we have the solutions. So for us, accepting that we were going to be wrong and not afraid to fail was the best thing that we ever did as a team sitting here in Port Moresby. Next. So we got to work. We put our brains around the pandemic, reading at the beginning of 2019. We were lucky enough that the EU made some funds available, not a lot, but enough to start thinking about what could happen. And we went from doubting to doing. We realized that we had to do something very quick. And you can see here, bus, schools, and New Pela passing. You will see what this means later, but basically, we started some very simple activities that had to do with hygiene on buses. We moved from buses to schools, 40 schools the first time in Port Moresby with the generous support of the Japan. We were building on what we had done the previous week or the previous day. So we went from bus to a national hygiene campaign, and hygiene was kind of the lowest hanging fruit because we have experience on developing messages that we could build from let's say, from the polio campaign that we had done 2 years earlier, and there's enough information among agencies and partners that we could tweak and refine the messages to get the word out very quickly. So the new PELA was developed by the government with the support of UNICEF and WHO. Next. Okay, so I want to share this cartoon because we strongly believe that when the sky is throwing you lemons, you make lemonade. So when it's downpouring, this guy flipped the umbrella and started collecting the water. And, you know, this is some of the, how we approach the challenges in PNG. There's a lot of challenges in the country. There's not enough resources to do the ultimate solutions, but we took every challenge as an opportunity to learn and help the communities. Next. So through community consultation, government consultation, and partners and teams and cross-sectoral conversations, we began to think about what could be the most effective way to get the word out in high densely areas of the country. Next. So as you know, I don't have a car, so I walk everywhere in Port Moresby. I realized that we have these buses, right? The buses are privately owned, and they usually have tourist commercials on the side and the back of them. And I thought, what if we plaster these buses with hygiene messages? And as the idea began to grow, and we shared it with the team and other partners, they loved the idea. We also found out that there's 16 routes of buses that connect all the settlements and go deep, deep into settlement areas where some of the people don't even come out of them. So we realized that this would be the best and most effective, cost-effective and efficient way to bring the message to the people, rather than having a conventional workshop and you bring people over, you gather them in a closed space, you give them, I don't know, food and messages that nobody understands. We decided to take the buses and bring the message to the communities where they live. Next. After that, the next lowest hanging fruit was to mobilize and distribute hygiene kits, right? Because as you saw before, soap is one of the most cost-effective ways to clean your hands and prevent the spread of disease. But we also realized that P&G has the highest indicator on gender-based violence and violence against children. We also realized that if we did the procurement of the hygiene kits in the normal way, we would have to get them from Copenhagen at a higher cost, bring them over here, it will take time, and then there will be a CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. So it will be more expensive, it will take more time, and we will be part of the problem for climate change. Not the solution, but a problem. So I decided to localize the hygiene kits, make them locally. We develop an LTA, which is a type of a contract. We went out for tender. We picked the best product, not the most cheapest, but the best product given the amount of money available. And we decided with the Child Protection Unit to develop social aware messages that could go inside of the hygiene kits. So they did a book on, like a storybook on violence against children, messages on violence against women, and we were able to purchase and distribute 6,000 hygiene kits that reach about 30,000 people. If one kit went to one household and you take an average of five people per household, we were reaching about 30,000 people just with this one activity that was funded in part by USAID. Also, the other thing that we did is that we took the 3 or 4 sources of funding that we were getting and we pulled them together to do multi-sectoral, multi-idea solutions. So we were not taking one money to do one activity, but we pooled the funding and we had sort of a vision on how we were going to tackle this. So the buses were funded by EU, the hygiene kits by USAID, the first 40 schools by the Japanese government, but all together, and monies were moving around to fill the gaps where there were gaps in order to get this almost like a framework or a master idea to tackle COVID. Next. So after we began to spread the word on hygiene and the actual hygiene kits, it was time to now, we had bought enough time for now to think, sit down and design hand washing stations. So I have this picture here because I was in, I had arrived in Port Moresby on October of 2017. This big EU project needed to be implemented. And by January of 2018, we got hit with the earthquake. So we had to respond to the earthquake as we were planning the implementation of the EU project. And again, this became an enormous source of information for us to learn and take that learning and move it towards the EU project. So one of the biggest things that people loved in the earthquake was the tippy taps. The tippy taps became an overnight sensation. People loved them. They understood that washing your hands was very important, especially in an emergency situation. But we also saw that tippy taps only last about a week. They break down because they're made with local available materials. And then also some people love them so much that they will take them apart and move them to their homes. So it was hard to keep up with the rate of decay and the rate of annexation, if you want to use a word, annexation of the tippy taps by private homes. But we started something that we call cross-pollination, where we would take information from an emergency into regular programming, and then from regular programming back to the next emergency. Because after the earthquake, we had volcanoes, landslides, polio, and now we're in COVID, right? Next. So the first thing that we realized from the tippy taps is that a lot of people last year in January, February, their first reaction was to do tippy taps. Somehow we knew that the science was telling us this emergency is going to be longer than 6 days. And here we are a year later, and we're still deep into the COVID emergency, and those tippy taps were not going to do the job. So we went to the drawing board, and we started with the understanding that form follows function. We're not in the business of creating beautiful things that nobody can use or understand. We knew we had to come up with a design that was intuitive, accessible, and above all, cost-effective. So the first iteration is the image on the top right, where you see a concrete platform, not very well drained because there's a water accumulation. So that's something that we had to work really hard with the contractor to make them understand that they had to be sloped so there's no water accumulation, to avoid mosquito and have other impacts, negative impacts on children. You see the hygiene poster against the classroom wall there. So we learned a few things. One, we learned that if we do it close to a classroom, we can put hygiene messages so children can wash their hands and see how to the 9 steps to do the hand washing correctly. But we also realized that there were a lot of problems. Next. We learned that the taps were too far away from each other, and the cantilever made it very easy for the pipes to break. Children were using the pipes as swinging bars and almost like a play equipment, which is beautiful in a way, but not bad for the investment because it would break really fast. And we had to go back and do a lot of maintenance in the first 10 schools out of the 40. So we went back to the drawing board, and before we completed the 40, we learned from the first 10 and we applied that learning to the next 30 schools. So what we had to do was to reduce the cantilever, the distance from tap to tap, and we did tack welding on every fitting that was that could be in this design. So nobody could steal the tap and nobody could swing it around and dismantle it. So that was very, very good for the overall life of the intervention and the investment, but also for operation and maintenance. In terms of program, we looked at the sustainability and we realized that our entry point was the school hygiene club. So we don't deliver just technical solutions, but we knew we had to deliver a hand washing point with something that would tackle behavior change. And the school hygiene club was the entry point. And we also realized that when we talk about behavior change, we're talking about two things. We're talking about washing your hands, change the behavior from not doing it to doing it, but also we introduce the operation and maintenance idea or need as behavior change, because under the EU project, we learn that people do not see the importance of operation and maintenance into their facilities. So they just wait for a new structure to decay over 2 years, they disappeared, and then a new donor comes, builds a new one, and the cycle goes on every 2-3 years. Rather than maintaining it, it is the replacement. And we, under the EU project, we've been emphasizing the importance of operation and maintenance to safeguard the investment, but what are the positive impacts when you do have a facility that is well taken care of? Next. So this is the final design. After the design additions, we have shorter pipes, we have tack welding, and the life span of this intervention, you know, it went miles away from the first picture that you see on the top right. Now, this led us to develop the first technical note, which you will see at the end of the presentation, and the cost for this intervention is $800. In a school of 200 children, this is about $4 per student. So we are not talking about millions of dollars, and we don't need ADB or the World Bank to put $3 million on the table to do this intervention. In fact, we did the 40 schools funded by the Japanese government with less than $300,000, 40 schools, covering about 8,000 children, including the hygiene club and all the visibility material that you see on the wall. Next. Okay, so from there, once we develop that very easy system, which takes about 3 days to be built, and we had 30 schools under construction, again, we bought time to think about what could be the next level, a next, let's say, version, like iPhone 1, 2, or 3. What could be the hand washing station number 2? And we focus on urban areas because we knew there was funding coming from the UK government to tackle urban schools. So first we engage in community consultation with children, teachers, maintenance officers at the schools. And we also began to look at the native ecosystem. What were people doing on their own? Almost, there's a beautiful phrase that says, architecture without architects. And this is construction and design that is done by people for their own needs without the help of any architects. And you see some of the most beautiful results around the world. So in one school, the headmaster put all these buckets, we're talking about the image on the top right, he put all these buckets at the entrance of the school with water and soap. So children would have to wash their hands before they went to the classroom. Then there was another solution on the image on the top left, that was designed by teachers. And this was your regular water tank. They built this steel structure with 5 sinks, taps, and soap. Excellent design, but we knew we could improve it and we could take it to the next level. Next. So the first design that we came up with was this system where you have prefabricated sinks. They're made out of plastic, which is very good because they last longer. They can take impact a lot better. And we use galvanized steel pipe. We have, again, integrated into the design the hygiene messages on the water tank and on the right by where the children wash their hands. This system has about 6 taps, so 6 children can wash their hands. And because it's in an urban area, we can connect it to the water system of the city, town, and we can also connect the wastewater into the wastewater system. So there's very little risk of puddles and wastewater being all over the school. Next. So this takes us to technical note number 2. We did the same thing as technical note number 1. And the cost of this solution is a little bit more expensive, but nonetheless cost effective. Why do I have this picture here? Because you can see there, the only blonde person in the picture is the ambassador of the UK. Before he committed the funds, he came to UNICEF. We gave him a talk similar to what I'm doing today. We showed him what the future could look like and how much it could look like. And after that meeting, he advocated to the UK government and they mobilized resources. And with that money, we are working in 40 schools in Hagen and Goroka, urban schools. After the first few were completed, we took them to the field to see the results. And not only he was very happy to see that children had access to hand washing points, but he was also delighted to be able to report back to the taxpayers in the UK and his government that there was actually tangible results at a very cost-effective, with cost-effective solutions. Next. Dean, next. Okay,
so sorry, Carlos, we've got about 5-10 minutes.
Okay, I'm almost done. So, okay. So this is like top of the line. You see the sinks, you see the galvanized pipes, you see the hygiene messages. This system right there has a price of $1,350, which is about 12 kina per student for my colleagues who are attending this seminar from PNG. So 12 kina is not a lot of money. People spend more money on buai, or beetle nuts per week than this. So this is tangible and attainable if you do the right steps. And we have already, I believe, done somewhat of a good job that now other people can start from here. They don't have to go back to zero. They can start from here and take it on. Next. Okay, so these are the 2 technical notes. The first design is $800. The second one is $1,350. We have pros and cons, bill of quantity. So you can take this and roughly build it with the bill of quantity that you have there. And at the bottom right, we have 3D modeling of what we envision. And why do I put these images here? Because I want you to see that we take this job serious and we use all the available tools to be able to predict an outcome, both in use and cost. Next. So I believe this is the final slide. On the right, we see the path, how we went from schools to a national level campaign. We had the first hand washing design. We did the assessment. That took us to the second design. We did the technical notes. And now every work we do, we integrate COVID into the planning, the programming, and the execution of any WASH project that we're doing in country at the moment. Takeaway notes, this is for you guys, cost of inaction. We saw that it's not about money, it's about lives. There's a link in behavior change to hygiene and operation and maintenance. And we need to capitalize on that and take advantage. Don't be afraid to fail and capitalize on the learning that we get from trying things, even if they're new. Willingness to pay. Ken Marshall has done an excellent job in the settlements, so in the study of settlements here in Port Moresby, and we know that people are willing to pay money to get water. So that's already a big plus for utilities who want to do work in settlements. People understand that nothing is for free, and they understand the advantages of having access to water. So that right there is like 50% of your job. Design it, cost it, implement it, assess it, and redesign it, and do it all over again. There's nothing wrong with assessing your own work, accepting that you made a mistake, and fix it the next time before you finish your stack of work. Involve communities. Communities know a lot about where things could go. They know where the pipes are. They know where the connections are. And in settlements, they most likely know where the best location for hand washing stations would be. Next. Thank you very much. And if we have time, I'll be happy to take questions. Otherwise, you can channel them through Dean.
Yeah. Dean, if I can quickly jump in and take one of the questions coming from Shinjini from ADB, who's working with our counterparts in Vanuatu. Carlos, is there in-country capacity to manufacture hygiene kits?
Yes, what we did is that after we went to tender, we found one company that was able to deliver the hygiene kits according to our specifications. And we found a printer that could do the social messages also with the quality that we wanted. It had to be a waterproof material so that they could last longer. So yes, the answer is yes.
Carlos, how much water would you budget for a child per day in one of these sort of facilities?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, if I saw that you had one of my images from the work that we did in Laos. That group hand washing did not have a tap, but they have 3mm holes. With 3mm holes, you need less than 1 liter per student washing their hands 3 to 4 times per day. In Papua New Guinea, we are forced to use metal pipes, so we have to use the water taps. I would say here, I mean, maybe 2-3 liters if there's good monitoring of the taps being closed after the children wash their hands.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. Has anyone got any more questions for Carlos while we've got him, just in case he has to drop out from Mount Hagen? And Carlos has generously given those technical notes as well that he put up on the screen. So we'll make those available after the presentation, along with some great manuals from UNICEF and one from WaterAid on the different types of hand washing stations that people have been using around the world. So I think the audience is pretty quiet there, Carlos. Hopefully you can stay on the line a little bit longer in case any questions come up. And there'll be some interesting discussion, I think, that comes up from the utility perspective on support for hand washing. So thanks a lot. Excellent.
I won't be able to stay too long because I have to go do some school inspections for the project.
Okay,
But I'll
thanks.
try to hang on.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time. That was excellent, really informative.
You're very welcome.
Okay, we will press on. So from the utility perspective, next thing I'd like to think about, what are some of the barriers to implementation? So we've seen earlier from the little survey that we did that one of the utilities, I think, has been asked to step into this area and give some help to the government sector. A few utilities, it hasn't happened yet, and for some, you think it might be coming. So if COVID hit your country today and your health department or your wash sector said, what can you do to help us? What are the barriers that you think that would be in to your country if you had to start today? So if you've still got the details, you should be able to go back to the same Mentimeter screen, and I'll bring that up. Go to the next one. And I'll share that screen. Okay, if everyone can go back to, everyone got access to that. I'll give about a minute on that. So what you should see, there should be a window there where you can type in 3 barriers that you think you would have to supporting the widespread implementation of hand washing stations. So we should build up a word picture there as people put in their 3 responses and hit enter, I think, onto that. How's that looking? Does that come up, Carl?
Yes, it's showing up on my screen.
Okay. If you get back into that section. Well, here we go. I'll give you a bit more time. It's in it. We need any more time there. Going, we'll 10 seconds, get your answers in, final answers, going, almost gone. 3, 2, 1, there we go. Voting closed. So that's builds up an interesting picture from the utility perspective, where you can see that from a utility perspective, it comes from a little bit of a different position than Carlos. When a utility, and I would have been in the same position, thinking, well, who's going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for the water? They're big issues from a utility perspective. I think because it's not a core business. So you're asked to step in, put in facilities that aren't your core business, provide water that you may or may not get paid for. And then if you've installed it, as you can see, their maintenance responsibility would be a big issue. So that's really interesting, and we'll add that into the materials that come out of today. So I'll stop sharing that one. We've got the presentation. Anyone got any comments on that? Do they think that's a fair representation? Okay. That's my little chat window, but Carl, you can keep me honest if there's any chats that come in. We've got a chat question there. Okay, so barriers to implementation, we've done through the Menti. So some of the things that I was thinking of, we've picked a lot of those up. So cost of the facilities and payment for the water supply. So they were top of my mind, and it looks like they were pretty common concerns. If it's a facility you've been asked to put in, how will you connect that? Will it be a standalone facility that somehow you have to provide water for, if someone will? Or will it be one that you have to connect to your network? What about non-revenue water? If you're asked to supply that water, and I know this is happening in a couple of countries where you have to provide the water for hand washing to support your community, but you're not being paid for it. Operation and maintenance, yeah, it was one of my issues as well, so that came up. Security, I think, in some instances, in some countries, will be a bit of an issue. So the security of not only the facility itself, but the staff that might have to go and operate, maintain, and potentially top the water up in some of these places. But in times of scarcity of water, it's a valuable commodity, particularly if it's provided in these areas, and there are security concerns about working there. That probably goes hand in hand with some conflict that can occur, particularly if you put a tank in without really going in and working a lot with the community there. That if you put a tank in, you could find people that closely live around that tank could take some sort of ownership over it, and before you know it, they're selling the water that you're providing for the whole community. So there's all sorts of potential there for conflict and security issues, and probably land issues is a big one too. And it's a concern for us under the TA about the safeguards issues that go with putting in tanks and facilities in community areas. And we need to do a lot of work to make sure that we do deal with these land issues. You just can't put these facilities in anywhere you think. Has anyone got any questions or comments on the barriers? Have we got Carl, anything popping up there? I'm just trying to bring my chat window back up. Okay.
We're not quite active in the chat box, but the last question there, I think, was regarding maintenance of the facilities. But Carlos answered that in urban schools, there are maintenance staff to look after the facilities. And he was saying that the big part of maintenance is actually the use of it. And it's more of teaching children how to use wash services. And that is what's crucial.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good representation, I think, of the discussions that we've been having with the utilities and the things that have popped up there when we drew that word cloud collectively, that there might be a lot of pressure on utility providers to provide this service, but from the utility perspective, there certainly are barriers there to be able to step in, and particularly at short notice. So there's some things I think that we need to start to deal with now. And as you can see, that for some utilities it hasn't happened yet, and for some you think it might be coming your way. So certainly some things to think about now rather than wait till there's an emergency and you have to actually step in. Also, conflict and security issues have come up. Yeah, so the things I was thinking of there, look, it doesn't apply to every country, but certainly in some of the areas where I think there are more settlement areas that aren't well provided by utilities at the moment, and some settlement areas that we've worked in don't have any government provided services at all. That by trying to take things like a water tank into these communities, you do come across a lot of issues. There are dangerous places to go, and we've worked in some places that the police and utility staff are reluctant to enter. So there's potential there for security of your staff and the conflict that might happen. As I said, if you put a tank in one place, you can find that people take some sort of ownership over that tank. And we've seen that in some places where a standpipe has been put in. They're supposed to serve the whole community, and before you know it, you have some people that do take ownership and they try to sell the water and take some sort of payment for water that's being provided for everyone's use. So it's in some countries it's pretty straightforward to go and put this in, the whole community will benefit, but in others just need to think through, are there any security issues and potential conflict issues that come up. Does that answer that question, Essie? Okay, we can come back to that if we need to. We might just move on if there's no more questions on the barriers that we see. The next thing I was thinking of, it's fine to say that we want to do these things, but if you're a utility provider, how are you going to integrate these facilities with the networks? Carlos has shown us a lot of great ones today, and they look like largely are connected to utilities, though there was one with a rainwater tank. So what are the issues associated with the integration to a utility network? For some situations, again, with the settlements that might be in your city area, it's not even easy to think about how you connect those. Again, going back to security and land issues, it's not an easy challenge. So what do you think? What are some of the connection issues you would have if someone asked you today to go and put a whole stack of hand washing facilities in and connect them to your network? What do you see the issues would be? And this is really part of the education for us as well on the ADB and the consulting side of the table. From your utility perspective, what do you see? And I might just jump out of that presentation, so stop sharing that, and we'll try and use the technology to have a virtual whiteboard. And I'll share that. Screen. There we go. You see that one? You got it, Carl?
Yes, it shows up.
Yes,
Okay.
fine.
Post
So,
it note.
yeah, want to unmute your microphone and give us an idea of some of the issues you'd see with your integration of these sort of facilities into your network, or put them in the chat and Carl might read them out to me and I can type them in and we'll try and get a collection of what you see the integration issues would be for these hand washing facilities for a network. Have you got any thoughts? Try to lower the screen up a bit. So where we're drawing the pipe, so I know that that's an issue there. We've been talking about land and security issues, so in some cases it's pretty straightforward. There's easements, you might get some community support, but in other places you would have to think about exactly where would you run the pipe. We've got any others that have popped up, Carl? There must be some thoughts there from the utilities about what they'd see as problems. Nothing popping up. Oh, there's another one.
And so far.
None so far. None coming through. Okay, we might jump out of that. Everyone's gone quiet there. And I'll give you our views and people can challenge those. That might be easier. Righto, we should be back into our presentation, hopefully. We're back. Okay, can you see that again?
Yes, all fine.
Okay, so some of the things that we were kicking around, so who pays for it? So who pays for this connection? So is it government funding or are utilities expected to pay for it? How far away from your networks will these things be? So Might be okay if it's some sort of settlement or a community area that's in a city, but if it's a long way away, how far away is it? How are you going to connect this thing up? Where are you going to run the pipe? Is a big consideration. It's a pity Frederick had to drop out today because we're talking to him about the situation in Vanuatu there, that some of these pipe routes might be easy, but some of the villages are a little bit more remote and it's difficult in an emergency to get a pipe there without tripping over the issues of land issues and potential conflicts. And if you're looking at that, not only who owns the land where the pipe's going, but who owns the land where you might be installing one of these facilities. Security and theft, so that's a big issue. We've seen it in a lot of places. As soon as you're on a pipe somewhere from A to B, as you can see in the photo there in the center of the screen, in some places that's what happens. As soon as there's a pipe there, you get a lot of people wanting to connect into your water supply. So security and theft are big considerations for network connections. And that all leads to non-revenue water as well. So you might have the theft issues, but on the other side of the non-revenue water, if you're providing water in an emergency to community facilities, who's paying for it? From a utility perspective, you could be in a position of helping your community out, but being penalised because your non-revenue water is going up, and then people start asking questions and saying you're not doing a good job because your non-revenue water is going up. So I think to me they were all considerations. And Seru, I don't know if you're still there from WAF. Are you still with us, Seru?
I did, yeah, still here.
Yeah, hi. So Seru, we were having a quick chat about this yesterday about WAF helping some of the communities. You got any thoughts on the challenges you've had with connecting some of these informal places to your network?
Yeah, so here in Fiji, we've got, even within the, our urban centers, we have got quite a lot of land where our informal settlements are situated, belonging to certain clans. So in terms of some of the challenges is, one of the biggest challenges we have right now, we have a lot of squatter settlements that's just popping up within the major urban centers. And this is, and how this actually goes is through no formal process. It's anybody goes to the landowner, ask them if they could build a house. All it takes is for that first house to go in. And then you have more and more people asking to build their house. And then now you have, like, you know, additional informal settlements coming in. For us, in terms of connecting these communities, we run something like a gang meetup, but we end before we end at the entryway into these informal settlements. Sorry about that. As part of the discussions that's been had, is one of the biggest challenges is actually, you know, when we put some of our assets in, then the landowner sort of changes their mind, sells the land to a developer. The developer comes in and tells everybody to move. Then we've got assets that's sitting there that we are now, we've installed it. Now we have to remove it. That cost has been a major challenge for us. And also on top of that, there tends to be quite a bit of dispute in informal settlements as to who owns certain sections of the property. So there's a bit of dispute in that area. We do face a lot of challenges. We've had cases where, you know, people are threatening us with lawsuits because we've put in an asset without their consent. A lot of this is based around the fact that the landowner has actually given them, say, a certain piece and saying that, well, this belongs to you. So when we're trying to access additional, when we're trying to access others behind these properties, and we have to go through these informal settlements properties, this is one of the major challenges we have. And also, there's a lot of water theft in our informal settlements. because we install our meters on by the roadside, and then they run their lines in. All of that line that goes into the informal settlement is privately owned line. We don't own it. So we, in terms of putting up sort of a public hand washing facility, that becomes a challenge, because our area of responsibility ends, let's say, by the main road. Any pipeline that goes after that, that's all private. So we ideally do not have any authority to actually install within this informal settlements. If we were to do any of this, we would be doing it on our main pipelines on the main road, which in terms of access, not everybody's going to be able to access them. Some of these informal settlements, because they're quite rudimentary, moving around is a bit of a challenge. They don't have proper walkways for the elderlies and things like that. So it sort of becomes a challenge for us. With the COVID-19 case, one of the things that, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the Fiji government has basically mandated us to ensure that we provide water supply to each and every Fijian that asks for it. We've gone to the extent where we are providing community tanks, which we fill on a regular basis for communities that do not have piped water. We have our scheduled water cutting to rural areas and to informal settlements that are not within our area of service. And all of this is coming out of OPEX budget. So it's a financial challenge as well. So yeah, that's some of the things, some of the challenges that we face here in Fiji in terms of COVID-19, the COVID-19 hand washing requirements.
Yeah, that's excellent, Sarah. So thanks a lot for giving us that overview. It's really touched on quite a few of the things that we've talked about and a few that will now come up. As you've explained, it's probably an easy thing to ask for and a reasonable expectation, but from a utility perspective, there are a lot of issues that you need to grapple with. So as I said, yeah, it's probably something, if you haven't been asked to do it, it still could happen. So it's really time to start to think through it. And people like Seru that have been through this, and Carlos with his experience, are certainly there to help. And I'm sure if you reached out to Seru, we'd love to have a chat to you about it. I'll dob you into that one, Seru, so thanks in advance. Thanks, Seru. So the next thing I wanted to briefly have a talk about, time's getting away from us a little bit. We've talked about the hand washing stations that might be connected to a utility supply, but what about the ones that aren't? So you might be asked to connect to actually facilitate one of these things. And we've seen that Carlos had one that was a rainwater tank supply. So there's a rainwater tank, some trucked ones, a trailer. We've talked to a couple of countries about barges. I don't think I've seen anyone that's used a donkey yet, but there's a lot of remote places to get to. So there are a lot of considerations. That's why I was interested to talk to Carlos about how much water these things might use. If you have a facility asked to step in and help, you might use one of the great designs that we can share and build it, connect it to a rainwater tank, but if it doesn't rain, how do you get water there? And I could see the situation where, as Seru's seen in Fiji, you're asked to go and fill up community tanks. And a couple of those photographs there are from Fiji. So Seru and his team are lucky they've got some tankers, but some of the other countries aren't as lucky with those facilities set up. And we might talk to Victor in a couple of seconds from YAP about a great proposal that they've come up with to address some of these issues. So some of the considerations for remote sites that we're thinking of, how will you transport water? Water's heavy, as we all know. It's not easy to get it around. How much water will you need? So you need to think about that. How many times a day might you have to go back to these facilities? So how often will you get back, and who's going to do it? So logistically, and particularly for smaller utilities, you don't have people standing around looking for a job. So If you have to put a tank in and you can't connect it to your network and you have to supply the water, you know, how are you going to do it? How much? Who'll do it? So there's a lot of things to start to think about. We've touched on the safety of staff. To go into some of these remote areas, particularly in some country settlement areas, it's not safe to do it. So safety of the staff, security of the sites themselves. And another one that came up, we were talking to the team in Palau. They said they give people fresh water from their hospital there, but they're worried about the cleanliness of containers. So you might give someone really fresh water in a container that mightn't be clean, or it gets contaminated back in the house. It's provided for washing hands, but actually is for drinking water. So potentially you're trying to mitigate disease transmission from COVID, but introduce other problems by giving people water in tanks that they could use for drinking. So how do you maintain water quality if you're transporting it around to these remote sites? So Victor, hopefully you're still with us. Victor, are you, or John from YAP, you both still there?
I'm still here, Dean. I'm still here.
Okay, Victor. So, yeah, Victor and the guys from YAP have been working with Pat, one of the consultants from YAP, and yesterday came up with a great proposal for us. And Victor might briefly just talk about the situation in YAP, but we put this up about the remote facilities because that's the situation Victor and the team find in YAP. So, Victor, have you got probably just got a few minutes if you want to fill us in on the situation in YAP and the sort of things you're thinking about to implement this system in your area.
Thank you, Dean, and good morning to everybody, all the participants. On behalf of the state government, thank you all for this opportunity, for the most especially on our project proposal. That I know for sure it will be entertained at a certain level with the ADB. But I'm not going to go over the 16-page proposal. I will just share the idea and why did we come up with this particular project idea. As you know, YAP is one of the 4 states in the Federated States of Micronesia, also known as FSM. YAP also has our island comprised of 138 small islands and atolls, 19 of which is inhabited, and it's about the size of Texas, state of one of the states in the U.S. So it's a big area for the government to cover. We have set up some water security project, most especially in the outer island. But with the water conservation effort, it's always a issue to use water in the neighboring island to wash hands. So, and we don't have the means to transport water from the main island to the neighboring island to provide this to address water issue. So I hope Carlos is still with us because with the hand washing hygiene presentation, I understand that water and soap is one of the needed ingredient to ensure that the spread of virus is addressed. But what if we use salt water? That's what we have. Does it serve the same purpose? Because the island is surrounded with salt water. But for the main island of YAP, we have installed some of the hand washing stations within our public schools, private schools, churches. But I've seen the need to improve on these assets. This was funded by UNICEF and USAID as well. But these are just a short-term project that was carried out within the state. We are looking at the long-term solutions for these hand washing stations, and also some of the pictures that I've seen that was presented by Carlos. And it has given me some idea on how to do the awareness activity. You know, we mainly focus at this time with COVID-19 awareness and educational material, but I felt that we have left out the message on conservation of water that needs to be addressed at the same time. Here in Yap, we just experienced a 2 years drought. So water conservation is really something that we preach and educate our children, most especially at the school. And the other aspect that I also wanted to share is the utility roles in all of this. It's quite a challenge for the utility in Yap to come in and install water hand washing station in all the facilities that the government felt that is important to establish all of this, because the utility roles ends where the meter is at. Anything beyond after the meter is the responsibility of the end user. So, but these can be addressed at the government and state level. But I hope the other country can look at all of this and see how we can integrate and come up with innovative idea on how the utility company can have their presence and try to assist the government and the community to improve the health benefit of the general population. The other question and comments that I also have with that I would like to ask the expert out there is there any technology or idea on how to reuse this water that been used for hand washing? You know, here in Yap, we try to kill 5 birds with just half a stone. So water hand washing water from the stations, I'm thinking it can be used for gardening, because we built this at the school level, and most of the school in Yap have their own agriculture program. So I was just doing some brainstorming here on how probably there is available technology to reuse this water rather than having it drain into the sewage system or the septic tanks. So these are some of the areas that I think our the expert needs to also try to look at. Thank you, Dean. I'm open for any questions or comments that it may need my attention to address. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Victor. And I think some of the things we've been talking to Victor about definitely about these considerations about how to transport water around to these remote sites. So it's something we'll be exploring in a bit more detail as we look at some of these projects. Now, I've just had a request here. If people can have a look at the earlier request I put to rename yourself. If you go into participants, just find your name there in the participant list. If you just let us know which organisation you're with, that would really help, just so we can make sure we've got a record of everyone, and thank you for your participation. So if you just rename yourself now, I can see a few names there, but we'll have to go through and work out where people are from. So if you could help us out just by doing that as we finish off today, that would be really helpful. So we're almost there. So one of the key things, so that's been some great feedback coming back, but what sort of assistance is required? Because one of the key things under this technical assistance project is what can we do to help you? So we've heard from Carlos, we've talked about from the utility perspective, what are the constraints and barriers that you see? What are the difficulties with connecting to the reticulated system? And for countries like Yap, where you might have to put a lot of these things out into remote sites, what are the constraints and difficulties you've got about servicing remote facilities? So over to you. So if you're asked today to assist with hand washing in your country and develop facilities, would you be able to do it? and what can we do to help under the TA? So we've been working pretty intensively with a couple of countries at the moment, but some of the other ones, it mightn't be top of mind because you haven't been asked yet, but as we've spoken about today, now's the time to think about it, put a plan in place, and yeah, what could we do to help you under the TA? So you could give us a bit of feedback today, or it's a question that we've got and we'd like to be able to answer soon because we're trying to develop projects now. And based on what you've heard today, if you were asked to help today, what sort of assistance might you like from us to put these sort of things in, so to prepare for hand washing or to start to look at it? So what can we do to help? That's a question. So anyone got any comments they'd like to make, or do you want to think about that and get back to us? We're also interested in what sort of help you might be getting from other places as well. So some of the NGOs, such as UNICEF and WaterAid, are really active out helping with the wash sector at the moment in hand washing. So I'd be really interested what sort of support is already out there that you're tapping into. Are you working with anyone? Anyone got any comments on questions, anything they'd like to share on what you think the TA might be able to do? You got anything there, Carl? Anyone jumped in?
No comments or questions so far.
Okay, I've locked my little chat window, Carl. How are we going getting people to give us their names? They're popping in there. So if you just change your name if you need to as we finish up, that'd be great. So yeah, look, we'd really like over the next couple of weeks to get in touch with us and talk about what sort of assistance you'd like under the TA to help out with this one, because I say it's a key issue and it mightn't have happened yet, but I think for a lot of utilities, if you get a COVID outbreak, it'll be a key question how you can step in your communities to help out. So we'll leave you today with some references. So Carlos has given us a couple of technical notes, which I've got in a SharePoint folder. And I've also got these documents that I think I've shared a couple of them recently. One's from WaterAid, and again, it's a bit of technical guidance, so similar to what Carlos has provided, as well as some documents there from UNICEF. So to give you a bit of ideas about the types of installations that people have worked with around Asia Pacific and through Africa as well. So there's a couple of thought jobbers there, and certainly happy to talk to you about what might be appropriate in different situations in the different countries. So those references will all be available today along with the presentation and a copy of the video. So conclusion, so we almost saw we are a little bit over time. So I'd like to thank the PWWA, so thanks Lucia and the team for helping facilitate this today and helping us get organised. Thanks to the ADB team for funding of this and helping again to get us organised. And particularly Carlos from UNICEF, great presentation from Carlos about the work he's doing, and John Dennis, who wasn't able to join us, but John jumped in and helped prepare those couple of slides on the importance of hand washing. So that's about all from me today. So I'd like to hand over to make some closing remarks to Jingming Huan, Director of Urban Development, Water Supply Sanitation for the Pacific Department of the ADB, to close us off for today. And I encourage you all over the next couple of weeks to get in touch with us. We'd really like to follow up on this workshop.
Thank you very much, Dean. And thank you. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. This is Jingming from ADB Pacific Department. On behalf of the ADB WASH team, I really want to give you a very warm welcome for joining this second webinar of the WASH program. And also many thanks to PWWA, Carlos, and other speakers. I know you are from Nauru Utility Corporation, YEP Water Authority, Fiji, Solomon Water, Samoa Water Authority, UNESCO from Vanuatu, Tonga Water Board, IWS Samoa. Please put up your hand if I miss any of you. And very nice to see you all. I just want to say 3 points here. Wash is very, very important, and the water utility in every country plays such an important role. The first point, I really want to say that I like our friend Victor from Yap Water in FSM. He mentioned that we always need to kill 5 birds by half stone. I should say that this stone is wash, but we try to use it to kill many birds. According to WHO, the huge improvement of life expectancy depends on 2 things: safe water supply and massive vaccine program. Specifically nowadays, worldwide, the COVID-19 pandemic is still very serious. I know most of our island countries are very lucky because we have started the lockdown really very early. The safe water supply is not only to fight the COVID-19, but also other transmittable disease and waterborne disease. I know we had the measles in Samoa and we had dengue in Marshall Island. If we can build better resilient through WASH, we can have a better way to different virus shocks and not only COVID. So this is the purpose of WASH, not only the COVID, but many other transmittable and waterborne disease. And then the second point is the safe water supply would be necessary for everyone, especially for the most vulnerable, because we know only everyone is safe, then we can be safe. Because otherwise the disease would be transmitted from, this one to that one. So here specifically, we would like to hear from you where ADB can better support you in your areas as we discussed today. And specifically, we welcome comments like our friend Victor from YAP, your real demand and real questions. And so how our utilities can play as a key role to ensure everyone in the urban area who can have access to reliable and quality water supply. And then the third point, ADB, we are a bank, yeah? So we really want to work with you together to develop future pipeline investment for water and urban services. And we all know government would have many different priorities in post-COVID-19 time. But we believe the water supply, hygiene, and sanitation should always have the priority. So let's work together on the platform of WASH to really highlight the importance of safe water supply, hygiene, and sanitation, and persuade the government to put it as a priority for the future investment. And we really look forward to working together with you on that. And of course, many thanks to the to organizing this meeting. And then we look forward to more of these workshops and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you again, and stay safe and stay happy.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for attending, everyone. We do have more workshops coming up. The next one in our series is on financial management in the times of COVID. We might do that in the next couple of weeks. We've got some financial consultants that are working on a project that might be able to jump in and help us out. And the following one after that is water safety plans. So keep an eye out for your emails. We'd love any feedback on the workshops and things you think would make it more interesting, engaging, and information you like. So finance and water safety are coming up next. Thanks a lot, everyone, and hope to see you next time.
And can we take a group photo? I really want to see you all. Although we cannot do face-to-face, the Zoom would also be very helpful. And we look forward to meeting you, everyone, face-to-face very soon.
We could just put on the camera.
Yeah,
Yes.
Dean, could you please share your screen?
Yes, I'll do that now. Stop sharing.
Everyone just popped on their video. We can just talk about it.
We're going to turn the cameras on. We can get a photo. Oh, there's Victor's smiling face and John.
Dean, you have a very nice background. Very Pacific.
It's very fake. It's a cold, grey day here in Newcastle. It'd be nice to be in the Pacific. I think it's the same as yours, almost.
It seems we are from the same place. But I'm in Manila.
So Frederick's gone.
Dustin, Ginny, Anuma, Che.
Can anyone take a photo, please?
Maybe that's all we're gonna get. All right, 1, 2, 3, smile. Got it. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. Well,
Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you very soon.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Dean.
Okay, bye.
Okay,
Bye,
have a nice day.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
See you at the
Thank
next
you,
one.
Carl.